Welcome back to the big show, Video Game Reviews. Today I'll be talking about Trek to Yomi on the Nintendo Switch. That's Trek to Yomi with an M. Trek to Yomi would be a very different game. It would be a different game entirely. Yomi is the underworld, or the land of the dead, in the Japanese Shinto religion. In that way, it's actually kind of similar to the Hades of Greek mythology. Listen, the developers crafted a beautiful and cinematic world with Trek to Yomi. I really enjoyed, like my favorite part of the game, and this is a little sad, but I really enjoyed walking from one battle to the next and just admiring the artistry that went into the presentation. But unfortunately, I don't love the combat. And from what I've seen, that's actually a pretty common complaint of this game from other reviewers as well. So these issues with the combat are further compounded by the visual style that they have chosen, which is, hang on, wait a minute. I thought you just said you liked the visual style. I do like the visual style, but I don't think that it lends itself well to the gameplay. While the grainy black and white aesthetic looks cool, it can sometimes make details hard to see, which is a bit of a shame because it can get in the way of the combat, making it more difficult to read enemy movements and respond with a well-timed parry. However, you can turn the grainy film filter off, which does help a little bit. Even though it looks cool, it's just not really practical in my opinion. Maybe if they had zoomed in on the battles, like when you get into a fight, if they had just pulled the camera in closer or allowed the player to do so by controlling the camera, then the visuals might have worked better together with the filter turned on. The combat system is, I've heard people kind of go both ways about it, but I would call it fairly intricate, and it could be described as, I know, it's blah, it's overused, whatever, but I would describe the combat as Souls-like, as it involves a stamina meter, blocks, parries, counters, etc. So it's kind of similar in that way to Salt and Sanctuary, although it feels very different here. I'm not the biggest Salt and Sanctuary fan out there, but I have to say that it feels better to play than Trek of Yomi does, in my opinion. However, they are very different games, as Salt and Sanctuary is a 2D Souls-like Metroidvania, where progression in Trek to Yomi feels more linear. Well, it doesn't just feel more linear, it is in fact more linear, with some choices to make along the way that can lead to different outcomes. But overall, it's a pretty structured experience, I would say. If you're not interested in all of that and you're just looking for an action game, this is not it. You might be able to skate by on easy mode with some difficulty, particularly close to the end of the game, but anything higher than easy mode will eventually require you to, quote, get good and learn the combat system, which is, again, made unnecessarily more difficult by the often small size of the characters on the screen because of the positioning of the camera, depending on where the camera is fixed in a particular area, especially near the end of the game when enemies really come at you in little swarms and obscure your already struggling view of the action. As you can see, this does feature a fixed camera similar to the older Resident Evil games. There is an option for English dubbed voice acting. I was pleasantly surprised to find that this was mostly pretty alright. It wasn't too terrible, as a lot of English voice acting can be when translated from Japanese. Although I did still choose to play through the game with Japanese audio and English subtitles because I'm effing classy like that. The sound effects are on point and fit well with the on-screen action. The music is also spot on in terms of creating a tone that feels appropriate to the setting and adds to the sense of atmosphere, which the game is good at creating. That's definitely one of the strengths here with Trek to Yomi. The most contentious part of the presentation for me is the aforementioned visual issues in an otherwise nice-looking game, although it does look like a PS2 game, but I mean that in the best possible way. and I don't have an issue with that. I think it looks great. The load times are excessively long for a 2D game, especially. You just don't really expect to see that, even though this is technically 2.5D. Wow, man, these load times. Anyways, I could best describe Trek to Yomi as if Limbo met Dark Souls or Salt and Sanctuary with just a dash of Resident Evil. That's pretty much Trek to Yomi. The text size is too small, and there are no options to adjust it. On normal mode, I found this game hard enough to have to set it down after achieving some decent progress. It was basically pick it up, play a little bit, like, whew, that was exhausting, set it down, and then come back a day or two later and chip away at it. I felt like I was carving a sculpture out of a stone block or something playing through this game on normal mode. However, I do have to say that same level of difficulty does make the game rewarding when you're able to overcome a section that seemed impossible the last time that you played it. That's always a good feeling. In this way, it really is quite old school. That's pretty much what old school games were. You pick it up, you play the game, hopefully you got a little better, hopefully you get a little farther, and then you're like, okay, that's enough, let me set this down, I'm freaking exhausted. If you play on a sufficient difficulty level, even though it isn't ultimately that long of a game, due to the fair amount of challenge, it will take you longer than, quote-unquote, it should. I do enjoy that, along with the cinematic style of the game, though one can't help but wonder how much sharper it probably looks on other hardware. Not just for aesthetic reasons, but for the benefits to the gameplay that would produce. Your increased ability to read enemy movements and respond accordingly would be helped greatly by more crisp, clear visuals, I think. Because if I can see what's going on in the game and I don't respond accordingly, that's my fault. If I don't know how to respond because I can't discern what the hell is happening on screen, which is mostly a problem in the later levels, then that's kind of on the developer. Trek to Yomi normally sells for $20 and is going to take up 4 gigs on your memory card. If you're a fan of Salt and Sanctuary or the Blasphemous series, and you like the idea of a similar but more linear game, you might want to check Trek to Yomi out when it goes on sale. But regardless of your taste in games, I don't know that anyone really needs to rush out immediately and pay full price for this. Like, is it worth a playthrough? Maybe, depending on your taste in games. But is it urgent that you play this game? Absolutely not. I have to confess to being drawn in by the visual styling, but the actual experience is, it's alright. Anyways, look, that pretty much does it for this one. If you enjoyed the show or found it helpful, click like and subscribe. Don't forget to brush your teeth and wash behind your ears, and I'll see you all next time, whenever that may be. Bye-bye.